So I was pulling off an 80% savings and investing rate. Hey folks, Jamie here. If you've watched my channel, then you know I went through a serious financial implosion at one point. For the first time ever, I have typed out everything I can remember about how I went from completely ground zero financial destruction to financial independence in about 8 years, which is no small thing. At one point, I was making up to $190,000 a year in Seattle, but I looked like a starving college student on an extreme budget. I drove a used Hyundai Accent with an extremely low car payment, which has now since been paid off for a very long time, and I still have that car. I always managed to find cheap places to rent. I had no subscriptions for anything, and I cooked all my food at home, which was one of the biggest sacrifices because I'm just such a terrible chef. Everything tasted like crap, but I was able to save about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Not save and invest for almost a full decade, and you'd be amazed how much and how quickly that turns things around. So starting at about age 43, this is when I had less than zero to my name because of debt, and I had to survive a divorce over the next few years as well. Now, sadly, statistically, I was way behind what you're supposed to have saved for a 43-year-old at that time. So for me, I had to seriously kick in the afterburners and get caught up to speed as fast as possible. Looking back, I don't even know how I did it, but I did it, and I'm going to share with you exactly how I did it. To make up for being decades behind in my savings, I had to choose to have a high-paying, but also, unfortunately, very high-stress tech job. But for me, I had to take extreme measures because I needed extreme results. And friends, anything worth doing is hard to do. You want to get in great shape? Yeah, it sucks waking up at 6 in the morning and jogging till your heart's pounding out of your chest and monitoring everything you do. But there's a result. So if you want a result that I got, you're going to have to knuckle under and put in the work, and I promise you it will be worth it in the long run. So breaking down how I did this into simple steps and simple bullet points, as simple and as clear as I possibly can, I broke all this down. These are aspects of my life. This was my life for about 10 years, and I'm breaking it all down to you. This is my life experience. This was me trying and failing, getting my teeth kicked in, every once in a while getting a huge win, repeating, grinding, rinse and repeat it until I finally got to where I did. There's a lot of ways to do this. This is my way, and I hope it's useful to you. Let's jump in. Step one, which I'm going to touch on lightly, you have to dramatically increase your income because you can't save 80% of what you make on a low salary. You just can't. So here's exactly what I did. I already had a bachelor's from when I was very young, and this was before I was financially destitute, and the employer I had at the time when I was sort of restarting myself paid for education. And in fact, a lot of companies do. If you do your research, you'll be stunned at how many companies pay for education. I think even Starbucks does it. And because I already had a bachelor's, I just went for a master's, and I put in the work to write the acceptance letter, and I worked my ass off to get into this program, and I did it. And I just didn't pick any old degree. I picked a degree that I knew was in high demand, that I knew paid really good, and I knew that was within the ballpark of the existing skills I had. That was UX design. These days they call it product design. And this is how I went from a $50,000 a year salary to $120,000 a year salary, like that. Within 2.5 years of being in this program, somebody snatched me up, and I just kept getting raises and raises after that. So here's the hack. If you're a younger person or you're restarting yourself like I am, don't pay for your own school if you can get away with it. That is crippling debt. Find some company to pay for it. I know you can do it. Now, unfortunately, anything in software design is not going to be really very fun. You will always be under high pressure. There will always be argument and debate, and the things you're working on will have major investment dollars put behind them. So it's just going to be a high pressure environment. But jobs like this is what you have to do if you want to make the big money and get out of the rat race and get off the hamster wheel as early as possible. And unfortunately, this means you might have to choose between comfort and some easy fun job that you could do while you're in your sleep, between financial independence. So just looking at this from a mathematical perspective, this higher salary naturally created room for a massive savings rate. And these two have to work together here. You need rapid income growth and, let's just call it, expense control or extreme frugality if you're going to hit this 80% savings rate. Step two, how to hack the biggest expense, which is housing. For the first part of my reset journey, I was married, so I had a spouse that I could split the monthly rent with. And even if with that, we always managed to find really, really cheap places to rent. So my share was about $700 a month. And even one of the most expensive housing markets in the United States, Seattle area, we managed to find a place for about $1,500 a month. Yeah, it was rough around the edges, believe me, but the neighborhood was okay and we were able to live more or less in peace. But then post-divorce, which happened, I had to find a place individually for myself. And one thing, even I have my limits. I refuse to look at these dangerous apartments. Apartment hell is something I wouldn't do simply because I didn't want kids sitting on my car and having to worry about being robbed all the time. I was looking at places that were very, very cheap, something a person who doesn't make a lot of money might be looking at. But I had my eyes on a couple things, some sort of mother-in-law unit or some sort of detached unit where I could just be there by myself that was cheap. And I just got lucky. I found it. Maybe I didn't get lucky because I researched my ass off, but I did find a spot like that. And this was a cute looking mother-in-law unit. It was a basement, but in a really nice neighborhood. And that was about $1,300 a month. Then every once in a while, my landlord would try to raise the rent and I was able to negotiate back with her to keep it the raise very minimal or not at all because she knew she had a great tenant in me. I was single. I had no kids. I had no dogs. I was incredibly quiet. The rent was never, ever, ever going to be late. And I helped out a little bit around the property. So she didn't want to lose me because landlord's biggest fear is they get some tenant that doesn't pay rent or is dangerous or just not a desirable character and rent's always late. They don't want people like that. And it's really hard to get someone out once they get someone like that. So she loved me and she wanted me to stay there. Okay, that leads me to step 3, which I'm going to call transportation, the hidden money drain. So even though I was making good money now and I was in the tech industry and I became friends with a lot of people making really good money, I never got some baller car like a Tesla or a Porsche. I saw everybody doing that. I never got a brand new car. I never got a luxury car. And I never incurred upon myself a car payment. In fact, my first car before I got the Hyundai was this 1997 purple eggplant Buick LeSabre that I paid $2,400 for. I can't believe I got about 4 good years out of that car before it finally died. And then I did get the Hyundai. So my transportation costs were like nil. When I got rid of the Buick, I got an extremely fuel efficient car, the most fuel efficient I could find without being electric because electric cars are very expensive. So with some napkin math, I easily saved about $20,000 over the years in car payments. But even more than that, it's not just that I saved $20,000 over car payments. I was investing that $20,000 of those car payments into the market. Now, if you start thinking like an investor, and I wish you would, you have to think $1,000 isn't just $1,000. $1,000 could earn you 10 to 15% if you put it in the market over time. So that $1,000 could actually be many, many thousands of dollars in several years. So the $20,000 in car payments that I saved, that is money that I was putting in like tech stocks. So I just didn't save $20,000 in car payments. I probably made who the hell knows what, but maybe $50, even $100,000 on that money because I had it put in the market about 8 years ago before the AI boom happened instead of buying new cars. Okay, step 4, a big one. You have to wipe out all debt. I paid off every single credit card I had completely, but I didn't close them. And I do use them every once in a while because using your debit card all the time is kind of risky. It's not secured, right? So if someone gets hold of my debit card information and they spend $5,000 out of my account, I don't think that's, in fact, I'm almost certain that's not recoverable. But if someone gets a hold of my credit card information and they spend $5,000, I can dispute it and they'll say, okay, clearly it wasn't you, and they'll just not charge you for that money. So I do use credit card every once in a while, but you gotta pay it off all the time. Never carry a balance month to month, with a couple of small exceptions. One time I had kind of a larger balance on that, but the stock market had also gone all the way down into the toilet. So I could have took that money to pay off the car. But instead, I took that money and I invested it in the market. And I know that was a smart move because the card was about, let's say, 15%, but I knew I could make more than 15% by taking those same exact dollars and putting them in the market instead of paying off the card. This is where guys like Dave Ramsey and stuff, they don't agree with me, but it worked for me. And then once I made some profit with that money, then I paid off the card. But I never let my cards get to be a runaway amount, like $10, $15,000, because that is crippling and it's really difficult to get out of that. The other thing about credit really is only there as a mechanism for you to buy things you can't really afford. So, oh, I need a new car, but I don't have $30,000 in cash. Oh, I'll just go get a car loan. Oh, I'd love to have a new home, but I don't have $1 million cash. So, oh, I'll just get a loan that I can pay off over 30 years. I had a basic principle that if I didn't have the cash, then I generally wouldn't buy it. And in that case, does it really matter if you have a baller 800 credit score? It kind of really doesn't, because a credit score is only there so you can get a cheaper rate to buy things you can't really afford. And that was my thinking. Okay, step 5, let's call it my ruthless lifestyle changes. Ruthless meaning for a period of time, you can almost give up on your standard or typical American conveniences that we like and enjoy. For example, I canceled my Netflix. I canceled my gym. I canceled my Amazon Prime. I mean, I canceled everything that wasn't like insurance or something I had to have by law. I didn't buy hardly any new clothes. And if I did, I would go to like a Marshall's or a Ross and just get something cheap. And I leveraged my superpower of cooking terribly tasting food. And I used that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So while everyone else I was working with was running to this hip new restaurant in downtown Seattle to grab a burger and paying, $20, $30 a day on their lunch, I paid maybe $3 or $4 a day for my lunch maximum. Oh, and then you're going to have to get with oh, I can't go with you guys. I brought my own lunch, and you get kind of the side eye like you're impersonable or something. But no, I had a mission. I was on a mission. So here was the daily grind. Same boring meals, no variety in my food, absolutely no restaurants except on rare occasion. But these things, thinking back, also really worked in my favor. I had no real bad habits. I barely drank alcohol. I never smoked. I wasn't into gambling. I didn't care about gambling. There's lots of casinos around Washington. A lot of people go. I never did that. Not even buying lottery tickets. And I never had any kids to take care of. Now that's a lifestyle choice. It was partially my choice, partially because I usually had partners that either didn't want kids or already had kids. But mathematically, that was a massive expense that I saved. I also hardly ever had any pets, and I love animals and I love pets, but that was because I was moving around from cheap place to cheap place, and a lot of them didn't have a pet policy, or it's just better as a tenant if you don't have pets and try to get them to consider you. Because of course, if you don't have a pet, they think you're a better tenant. As mentioned, I typically use my debit card for almost everything I could, unless it was dangerous to use it. And I missed a lot of social events. Great bands to come Seattle. I didn't go to those. The only place I didn't really cheap out was on dates, because it doesn't look good when you're dating. And after my divorce, I was trying to get out there and get a partner again. So even I have my limits. So things were going along pretty good. I couldn't believe when I started putting that much money and savings into the market, how fast things were compounding and going up. However, boy, did I get kicked in the teeth with my first major financial screw up while I was on this reset road to recovery. Because I was new to picking stocks and stuff, I got on some newsletter, and the newsletter had this guy who was very convincing that said, this is his portfolio, this is what he suggests. So I was just blindly, like a moron, buying whatever he said without doing a whole lot of research on my part. Well, one of those stocks, someone started running it up, kind of like a Wall Street Bets, GameStop type of situation. When this is where people artificially inflate the market by putting tons of money in it, and they pull it out really quick. So one of these days, I'm logging into my Robin. I'm like, what is going on here? Within about a week, one of my stocks went up so fast that I made $100,000 on that stock. And for someone who was broke not that long ago, that was stunning. But unfortunately, this isn't a feel-good story. Instead of cashing out and selling that massive return, which was a fortune, I didn't. Because being new to learning investing, folks like Warren Buffett would say, oh, never sell your stocks, long-term hold, don't panic, don't do anything, just let stuff in the market, never sell out, just leave it alone. That stock went right back down to where it was originally. So this was me watching $100,000 slip through your fingers. Not a great feeling. So I just had to learn, adjust or die. I gave up the stupid newsletter and I started doing my own research. And I still mostly do hold stocks because I know what those companies are. And I do tons of research to find out, are they going to go up or down? Constant research. And if I do see something go to the moon like that, you best believe I'm going to be taking my money out of it if someone's just gaming the market like that. So another sort of ruthless thing, but actually very effective, is forced automated saving and investing. What do I mean by that? Let's just say one of your partners, your spouse, got laid off. Would you figure out how to live on the remaining paycheck? It'd be really hard, but you would. Let's just say the government decided to raise your taxes 25%. Would you figure out how to live and adjust with that 20% additional taxes? It sucked terribly, but I almost promise you, you would figure out how to not go bankrupt with these additional costs. You would just cut back on your spending and adjust, and you would make it work. That's the same thing with automatic investing. So you have to impose upon yourself an extremely aggressive automatic investing system. So I had certain amount come out of my check that went right into Robinhood. A certain amount came out of my check that right into my 401k. And then I did an individual Roth IRA, and I maxed everything out. And I would live on what was left. And I'm telling you, folks, it wasn't a lot. And I kind of had this broke appearance to everyone around me. I wouldn't go to nice dinners. I drove this used car. I politely declined things like, do you want to go to the football game and all that stuff? I'm sure everyone thought I was just really struggling financially for some reason. Maybe I had crippling child support or whatever, but none of that was true. I was accumulating very, very fast. And I didn't even want to look like I was wealthy, because that just makes you a target for all kinds of things. Looking poor or looking middle class is how I roll. So with all this constant daily system, which I just shared with you right now, everything started turning around insanely dramatically. Why? Because instead of putting most of my income into just buying crap like most Americans do, cars, whatever, constant vacations, constant shopping trips, dinner 7 times a week, lots of alcohol, smoking, 3 or 4 kids, 2 or 3 dogs, all that money that just goes away once you spend it, I was putting into appreciating assets, stocks. And those, since then, since I finally figured out which ones to buy, which actually make pretty good returns, all that money was making for me between 10 and probably 20% over the past 8 years, which is really good returns. But we've also had an incredibly positive stock market. I got in early on the AI boom. So all this is possible. At least it was for me over this time period. So I painted a rosy picture of how you can just make all this money and save all this money and just have your nest egg just go to the moon and become financially independent in about somewhere between whatever 7 to 10 years. Let's talk about the unfortunate parts that suck about this lifestyle. First of all, my job, UX design, if you're not familiar with that, I basically do the interface and the psychology part behind apps, and I don't code them. But I am still kind of a software designer. And in this world, there will always be high stress and high pressure. Most of us work at companies like Meta or Google or Amazon, and it is a meat grinder. You will always have to deal with tight deadlines, a-hole bosses, intense scrutiny on your work. And if that's not bad enough, what really happens is the swirl, right? This is the argument, the debate. This isn't going well. Why are you doing this, this and that? You got to get this bought off with this department. You got to bought off with that department. Why did you overlook this? This isn't aligned to this. And it's this constant freaking furball of stress and anxiety. And I've had some close family members that left really high paying, prestigious jobs at Amazon. Technically, they had like a nervous breakdown, and I had all these techniques every morning to prepare myself for a stressful day. Morning talk downs, affirmations, deep breathing exercise, everything you can imagine. And that only even helped a little bit. Even therapy wouldn't even put a dent in this anxiety, but I just toughed it out. I knew it would be even worse to not have enough saved up for retirement and have very little money, because I was already middle-aged and I had to get caught up as quick as possible. So I just endured it. And now that I'm getting pretty close, I would say the stress was worth it, because pick your stress. Would you rather have stress on the job? Would you rather have stress knowing that you don't have enough money to retire? Would you rather have stress knowing you're just living paycheck to paycheck? Would you rather have stress knowing that you just don't have money in general and the fear and the anxiety comes across from that? I mean, between those two, and I've lived with both in my life, I would actually pick the anxiety and stress of the job over that lack of money, anxiety and stress, because that is horrible. So let me lay this out for you about how discipline like this can yield results over 10 years. Every year, I consistently put in about $50,000, sometimes even more, into the market, into stocks that I invested that I had a strong conviction were going to grow. My initial pay of about 120,000 increased over that time significantly until I was at about 200,000 with my bonus. So after all these taxes, my take home was about $93,000 to $100,000. And because I had taught myself extreme frugality, I was at about $35,000 or $40,000 a year. So that left over $50,000 to invest. And let me tell you this, my friends, I looked at my spreadsheet the other day. If I had not invested, I would have half as much saved over 10 years as I do now. So this is how I went from less than zero at about age 44 to financially independent at 54. 1 decade. In 1 decade, I managed to save and earn more than most people do in their lifetime. And I don't say that to impress you. I say that to impress upon you that if I can do it, you can do it. And I laid out the system for exactly how I did it. Really, if you follow something similar to this, it's really just stress anxiety and doing the daily grind and elbow grease. But after 10 years, you will see phenomenal results. So I'm going to put my eyes on my notes for a little bit because I want to read for you line for line what I typed out, the exact math behind all of this. So once you get yourself into the job that pays really good, try to go for about $125,000 a year. And after taxes, you're going to have about $93,000 a year. Now, if you can get your housing to $1,300 to $2,000 a month, that's going to be about $24,000 a year right there in housing. Now, a cheap car payment, which I had, was about $176 a month initially, but then it went to zero. So on average, that's about $2,100 a year. I got my car insurance down to $40 a month, which is $480 a year. My food and grocery, now this is where I was really skimpy. I only paid about $300 a month here, which is $3,600 a year. Now, I have to pause and tell you, if you talk to financial experts, they say one of the, if not the biggest expense is people going to restaurants. So food is the number one thing to cut. So that measly $300 a month I was spending for myself as a single person at the grocery store, man, that could easily be $1,000, $1,500 a month from what I see other people paying when they're always treating and going to their favorite restaurant all the time. So that really moved the needle for me. My entertainment was almost zero. So how can you say I spent $0 on entertainment? There's a lot of things I really enjoy to do that cost me nothing. I like to hike. I like to go for long walks and listen to YouTube videos. I like to ride my bike. I like to play chess on my phone. I really enjoy YouTube videos, and that is virtually no subscription at all. I promise you there's a lot of fun things you can do that cost you nothing. Subscriptions were zero. Clothing was about $200 a year. So my total expenses on average were about $40,000 a year. So $93K after taxes, taking out your $40,000 a year of expenses, you get to the $50,000 a year or so invested. So here's the rates. You took 50% of your gross money, and after you take out the essentials, that savings rate is 80%. So I was pulling off an 80% savings and investing rate, which ironically is the exact opposite of what 95% of Americans do. They spend about 90% of what their take home is, and they invest and save 10%, if that. So I did the opposite, right? I was saving 80% per year in things that made me money, not things that just took my money and depreciated down to zero, like clothes. So quickly, let me give you some common mistakes that if you avoid these things, I think you'll be on an excellent trajectory to replicate what I did to some degree. Here's 6 mistakes you should avoid. Mistake number 1, spending money on things that never earn you back. Mistake number 2, new cars that depreciate 20% the second you drive it off the lot. Mistake number 3, subscriptions that compound to thousands of dollars per year out of your pocket. Mistake number 4, doing takeouts and restaurants instead of cooking your own food from the grocery store. Mistake number 5, lifestyle inflation with every raise. So you know what I mean. You make a little more, you just start spending a little more. This is not a mistake, but a suggestion. Take the opposite approach like I did. Do the inverse of all those things and you're going to be crushing it. And you got to think long term. These are small micro moves every single day that grow until big mountain of stuff over time. Be okay with that. Understand that every day the needle's only going to move a fraction, but over time you're going to get to where you need to be. So I have for you an 80% savings rate action plan. So I'm going to read my notes here. Month 1, try to track every single dollar you spend, and you can easily do this using a spreadsheet or some sort of app. Month 2, I want you to identify your big 3 expenses. Typically, these are housing, transportation, or food, and understand how you might be able to reduce them. And by month 3, cut those big 3 by 30 to 50% through strategic downgrades. If you can, just do your best. By month 4, please eliminate all your debt using the avalanche or the snowball method. They're kind of complex to talk through, so just Google them. And by month 5, cancel every subscription and every monthly payment you don't actually really need. By month 6, set up automatic investing. This way, your money disappears into something making you money before you can see it or even spend it. Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff. Year 1, aim for a 30 to 40% savings rate initially. You're not just going to jump into 80% savings rate like I was able to, but just start with 30 to 40% if you can. And year 2, start pushing yourself. Now you're teaching yourself new skills and you're learning new muscles, right? You're learning new frugality muscles and you're saving and you're investing muscles. So for year 2, push yourself to a 60% savings rate. And this is going to require you to adjust to your new frugal lifestyle. And now year 3, if you could somehow replicate what I've did, you can get to an 80% savings rate. And then give yourself 10 years. You've got your 80% savings rate, you're putting into the market, you're going to be blown away how much money you have. You will be like, I didn't even think this was possible. I can't believe I did it. I'm the first in my family to hit these kind of numbers, all those things. But you just put in this kind of work for 10 years and you're going to get there. So I've got some final closing calls to action for you. The promise has been delivered. You now have the exact breakdown of how I personally, using my life experience and my trials and errors, achieved an 80% financial savings rate. Here's the reality check. It's going to require sacrifices most people won't make. There will be peer pressure. Your friends will think you're crazy or cheap. Let them, because it's worth the payoff. Financial independence for you early while they are still working all the way up to 65. My challenge to you, pick one expense to cut by 50% this month. Let's build a little community here and do this together. Share your biggest expense in the comments. Maybe we can work together to help you reduce those. In my next video, I will share with you my exact investment portfolio and how I'm building that as my tech exit fund, because I'm getting pretty close to getting off the tech treadmill. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you next time. Jamie out.